5 seconds of silence to capture the audio in the room. Are we going to do video as well, or is this just going to be audio?
I mean, it records it by default, so we'll have it.
Yeah.
We can use it for social clips. Riverside doesn't. Riverside's video setup, the way they lay it out on the actual screen, I don't think is very good, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
Has Emily been doing the video for the social clips?
Yeah, I sent her the one for Forecaster, which actually turned out all right. I think that was the most recent one she's had. Who was before Forecaster? Can't remember. Behavior.
I saw that clip. I saw the fundraising one where he was talking about having a plan that looked good.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Let's get it.
This motherfucker, I swear to God.
Right down the windpipe.
Make sure you stay close to that mic. I can tell when you're not close to it.
That's an outtake. We can use that on social media.
All right. You good? All right. I'm going to do a few seconds. Welcome back to the Middle Tech Podcast. My name is Nate Antetomaso, co-host for this episode with Logan Jones. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Down here in Lexington, we get to turn the mic on the normal co-host.
Yeah, we got a special episode this week.
Yeah, this is something exciting for all of us because we've been watching Evan build this company for how long has it been, Evan? A little over a year now?
About a year.
A little less than that? About exactly a year. So this was an idea that came to us that's hey man, you finally have enough progress. You're to the point of the company where we need to sit down and interview like we do some of these other founders. So we're both super excited to hear what you've been up to and kind of expose that to our audience as well.
Yeah,
our software entrepreneur in residence. We got
that's right.
Evan Knowles.
That's right.
Finally good enough to be on the guest seat.
All right. Well, to kick this off, let's just start by, where are you from, Evan? You talk about that a lot in our interviews when we're interviewing other guests, your hometown. Walk us through what it was like growing up where you're from.
Yeah. So from Elizabethtown, Kentucky, really loved it. It's not a really small town for Kentucky, but it's pretty small when you compare it to some other cities around the United States. It's about 40,000 people, but I loved it because I felt like I knew everybody. I went to a small Catholic grade school, and again, I felt like I knew everybody. And I'm just really one of those people that love to surround myself with people that I like being around, and I feel like building a network is something I've always been prone to doing, and I loved that part of Elizabethtown. And it's just a really good place for families to be raised. It was just a nice, quiet town, and I loved it. I didn't really have a whole lot of experience with entrepreneurship in Elizabethtown, but from the perspective of being a very family-driven, people-driven town, I really loved it.
How did you end up getting involved in technology and software and this kind of passion that you have for it now? When did that begin?
So I went to UK. When I got to UK, I met some friends in the Business Learning program that I'm still best friends with today. A few of them are Michael Lewis, Danny Perry, TJ Barnett, and many more. And we all kind of started throwing ideas around on starting companies. And Michael Lewis had one that he was beginning to work on with TJ called Finance U. And I was becoming good friends with him and had a connection to that company. Personally, that company was basically helping high school students raise money in non-traditional ways other than ACTs and SATs, and I totally flunked my ACT, so I didn't get any scholarship money, so I really resonated with that business model, and so we started building. All four of us, myself, TJ, Danny, and Michael started building, and that was my first introduction to actually starting and building a company. We built that in the dorm rooms, built the product, got paying users. And that was my first introduction to entrepreneurship in general, but especially technology, building a software product. I just felt like it was a lot of power to hold in your hands and reach people at scale and solve problems at scale. And I was super attracted to that and really loved it.
Yeah, talk about a lesson that you learned from that, because obviously that didn't pan out in the end. Everybody's working on different projects, but what's a couple tangible lessons from your first shot at entrepreneurship?
I would say just the amount of work it takes. We were college students, and we had class, and we would spend hours, after class building that. Obviously we weren't able to put as much work in that we would put in on a company now, but at least we got a taste of what it took to build a company. And then I would say just the importance of having a team that really meshes well together and is passionate about the problem they're solving, because as college students there's a lot of things distracting you, and that's life in general. And if you're not passionate about that problem you're solving, which we all were, you're not going to put your time into it. You're probably going to give up. And we were all super passionate about it, and we were all very talented people, and we all kind of fed off each other and were able to get a product to market as freshmen in college. And so I would just say those two things, the amount of work it takes, and then the importance that you need to place on having a really great team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the more significant stops along your roadmap of your life that a lot of our listeners are familiar with is that you were the first employee at Fuji, which was a major startup here in Lexington. So walk us through that story of, first off, how you got involved. I think there's some good advice in there for current college students about finding their way into the startup community, but also talk a little bit about what you learned being the first employee at a startup like that.
Yeah, that was amazing. I'm where I am today because of Fuji and Greg and Eric over there. I got involved with that purely because of me building a network, me putting myself out there. When I was at UK and we did that whole Finance U thing, and that ultimately failed, but I fell in love with entrepreneurship. I really wanted to go down that rabbit hole further. UK wasn't able to provide me that. UK didn't have the venture studio. They hardly had any entrepreneurship classes, and so I had to go out of my way to learn that. So I would fly out to San Francisco to TechCrunch or Las Vegas to CES and network with those people that I looked up to building companies. And eventually I just told everybody in the world, hey, I love this software thing. I love selling software. I love entrepreneurship. If anything ever comes up, tell me. And I made sure to tell, Gatton College at UK, which I was very involved in that. And Greg and Eric came to UK and said, hey, we need a student to help us really, scale this and start this with us here in Lexington, Kentucky. And UK immediately said, hey, we've got this guy named Evan, who, has been, being down our door wanting to get involved with this. And, that was how I got introduced to them. And at that time, it was pre-revenue, basically, pre-existing product. It was just a way to text an emoji and get food delivered based on that emoji. And next thing we knew, it blew up. We had stumbled into a business model that was a marketing platform using on-demand delivery services that allowed brands like Disney, who we worked with regularly, to engage their fans in a physical way on social media. And so we were the first company in the world, to ever do that at scale, where a brand could physically engage an audience on social media within 60 minutes of somebody engaging with that brand. And so we created a brand new way to market. It absolutely blew up. I moved out to Los Angeles to open an office out there for the sales team. We raised a good amount of venture funding. Actually went through some hardships, ran out of money. We went back down to about 30 employees in a matter of a week and a half. So Fuji was just this experience for me being, 20, 21, 22, and I left when I just had turned 23. That was my education in so many ways. And, again, I wouldn't be where I am today without that. And I fell in love even more with building things, given that I'd been there from the very beginning and saw the transition from nothing to, now it's worth a few, tens of millions of dollars. So being there through all of that was pretty amazing.
For sure. And towards the end of your time at Fuji, you started getting involved in real estate and looking at that, and kind of talk about that side of the entrepreneurship journey, and then how you've eventually brought those two passions together. Yeah.
I would say, for my age, I was making good money, and I just want to do something intelligent with that. I had started making money way earlier than most people did when I was, 20, 21, and most people were still juniors in college. So I just had, luckily I had a little bit of a head start as far as income goes, and I wanted to do something smart with that. And I spent a long time researching what was the smartest thing to do with money. And real estate just consistently came up, and especially the earlier you start in real estate, the better. And so I got some friends together that I thought would also be interested, and I knew also had some capital to put to work, and we started a company and started buying multifamily properties. I also own a house that I'm doing what's called house hacking, where I rent out my bedrooms. And so I just kind of, in a way, was opportunistic with my situation and said, what can I do with this situation? And I got involved in real estate, and I really kind of fell in love with it. I think it's a really cool industry to be involved in, and one that, again, the earlier you start, the better.
What advice would you have for young people who want to get involved in it? Because I've been kind of hovering around the idea of getting involved in real estate, but it's a very intimidating thing to get into. It's very capital intensive, or at least it seems like it from the outside. Once you start digging in, you realize there's other ways to do it. But do you have any advice for the younger crowd that's wanting to get involved in real estate that maybe is a little bit intimidated at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it can be intimidating. It's kind of an industry from the outside looking in. It's, older people that, are kind of, it can be viewed as there's like this wall, this barrier of entry, but really that doesn't exist when you kind of pull back the curtain. And my advice is, and this is what I did, was just spend several months researching. The first thing I did when I, again, had that capital to put to work and I didn't know what to do with it, I said, let me do a lot of research. And I went down a rabbit hole of about 4 months listening to every single Bigger Pockets podcast I could get my hands on. I probably listened to close to 100 of those. I read, close to in between 5 and 10 books on real estate. I just watched a ton of YouTube videos. So I spent the several months researching, and then I said, let me find some other people to get involved with this and pool our money together and go buy some properties. Another thing I did that, I always like to share is, it's intimidating to go buy a property because you don't know if there's something wrong with it. You don't know what to look for in a property. You don't know what a good property is if you're not doing the research. One thing I did that, I think was really smart was I reached out to the best home inspector I could find in Lexington, and I said, just cold, I reached out to him and I said, hey, I would like to take you out to lunch. I have something to propose to you. And I took him out to lunch and I proposed to him, hey, take me on, 3 or 4 of your inspections, and I just want to sit there and watch you and shadow you and understand what you look for in a house and how you inspect these things. And I did that. And when I came out of that, I was much more confident in what a good building is, what a good home is, what a good property is. And so my advice is just to do a lot of research and kind of get your hands dirty and meeting people in the space and learning from them. And then I had the confidence that I could go out with some friends and go buy some properties, and that's what we did. We bought a 4-plex and a duplex and we were 22, and we bought those in the same year. And so it's just a lot of research on the front end.
Yeah, and the reason we're talking about real estate in the first place here is because your software company, Symba, deals in the real estate space. But before we get to that, talk a little bit about the advantage that being a young person in real estate gave you, and also having that software background, because that's eventually how you identified the problem that Symba was setting out to solve. So just talk about how you viewed the space as a whole as it relates to the technology behind it, because I know you saw some things to you that were very obvious, but that was likely because of your age. Yeah.
The thing that I placed at high importance was just focusing on people and networking. And so I met a lot of people in the industry. And so I talked to a lot of people, and, I consistently heard some themes, and all of them I noticed, didn't put a focus on technology. And I'm very technology focused and noticed things related to technology. And so eventually, after I was in the space for a while and I had some of my own pain points related to taking care of our tenants and communicating with them, those relationships came back, and I was able to go talk to a lot of people and say, hey, are you having a similar problem that I'm having? And I was able to have this network of people to go bounce ideas off of. And eventually I found my co-founder doing that. I found a lot of early users. I found a lot of people that I was able to bounce this idea off of and get feedback from. And so it's just building a network. And then from there, I took my pain point that I was having, and I took my co-founder and I started thinking about ideas on how to solve it. And eventually we stumbled our way into what Symba is today. And so it's really just people and then having a pain point. And with my understanding of technology, as deep as I am into it, I was able to come up with a solution that eventually we, again, got to the point where we are today.
So talk about what it is. Be specific. Like, what is Symba, and then how has it evolved to become that?
Yeah, so originally I was having pain points around communicating with tenants. The real estate industry is actually kind of a cold industry once you get into it. Your tenants are living in your building, and oftentimes you don't have a relationship with those people, despite the fact they're living in something you own. And I personally had a little bit of a problem with that. And what I set out to do was create a way that I can communicate more effectively with them. As a very busy person, I wanted to have a very simple mobile application that can communicate with them and not use my own phone number. Because I don't want my tenants texting me all the time. I want to be able to communicate with them on a different number and do it in a really simple fashion and have some automated ways of communicating with them. So at least I could build a relationship with them. And our thesis was that if we solved that pain point, our tenants would take better care of the building and they would, turn over less. They'd be more likely to stick with us because we have a better relationship with them, because we had an easier way to communicate with them. So therefore, we communicated more often. And that was the thesis. That's what we were building, was ultimately a way to communicate and manage those relationships. And that comes down to a CRM, which is something I've always been very familiar with because of my background in sales. And so we started as a way for property managers to manage those relationships with the CRM. We went to market with that. We have built some prototypes. We talked to a ton of property managers. And it just so happened that a lot of those property managers were real estate agents. Real estate agents tend to see a lot of deals, and so they end up aggregating properties over time. And we would show people this software we were building, and we actually got the best feedback from agents eventually, saying, hey, my CRM sucks for my real estate brokerage, my residential real estate brokerage. I would be interested in using this. But as far as property management goes, I actually don't want to talk to my tenants as much because that gives them an opportunity to complain about my building or complain about things I'm not doing, or ask me to fix something. I don't want to talk to them more. I just want to get people in there and avoid vacancies, and then I'm done with them. And that's something that now I resonate with a little bit more, and I understand. But at the time, that pain point kind of led to this concept of building a very simple mobile-first, communication-heavy CRM, and that just happened to resonate more with real estate agents. And so now what we're building is a mobile-first CRM that prioritizes communication workflows for these agents, because right now they've got desktop-based software, but if you know a real estate agent, they're never behind a computer, and so they're having trouble, managing these relationships and adopting CRMs effectively. And so we're coming into the market being the first mobile-first CRM to help them build that business that they're working so hard to build, that is totally based on relationships. Yet many of them are using desktop-based CRMs that they're just not using effectively.
Yeah, and I think a theme that I've kind of noticed since being friends with you is you do an awesome job with research. So talk a little about the research you've done on the real estate industry as it pertains to the technology that's kind of emerging right now. And I mean everything from like Zillow and Compass to even the CRM software that's going on right now. It seems like you kind of identified this problem in the industry of the software being adopted a lot slower. So just talk about some of the stuff you've learned researching this industry and building a company within this industry as it pertains to the technology that is available to this industry.
Yeah. So basically, I'm really excited about real estate. For one, I'm personally in the space and I've enjoyed it. But I'm really passionate about this space and super interested in it. And it's really important to be like curious about the industry you're building a product for, because if you don't like learning about the industry, you're not going to succeed. And I'm really curious about the industry we're building in. And it's because, number one, it's the largest industry in the entire United States. The real estate's the biggest industry, across the world. And the market is just so massive that there's so much opportunity. And what's happening in the market right now is there's a lot of tech companies and digital brokerages coming into the market, providing consumers with a lot of new options, which is really good for the market. And there's a lot of focus being put on these consumer-facing solutions like iBuying or digital brokerages, new mortgage platforms. But what we saw was, why isn't anybody building technology for agents? And the answer that we kind of have is, agents, the average age of an agent is about 55 years old. The average age of a person in real estate is about 55 years old. So it's no wonder the technology's always been behind. But we're building technology for agents because even if these consumers use a platform like Zillow or HomeLight or some of these big platforms that are popping up and getting well funded, at the end of the day, 86% of all consumers are using an agent, and an agent is what determines their experience of buying a home. And so we're seeing this massive opportunity where everybody's kind of looking a different direction at how do we influence the top of funnel with these consumers. And we're looking at, well, how do we actually power the back end of the industry, which are these real estate agents? And we think the only way to change a consumer's experience with buying a home or selling a home is by changing the experience that these agents have with their software. And agents right now just are not really being empowered by great technology, and we're seeing a massive opportunity. And if you look at the business models of a Zillow, like you mentioned, all of their revenue comes from agents, but there's this perception that they're going to replace agents, and that's just not realistic. Yeah. Consumers want to work with an agent. They're buying the most expensive thing they're ever going to buy. They don't know anything about real estate. It's a very complex market. They want to have a trusted emotional relationship with the person that they're buying it with. And, we're coming into the market saying, hey, we're building for these people, and eventually we'll be able to change the consumer's experience because we're changing the backbone, of the industry that's actually mediating, their experience with it.
Yeah, the way you explain that makes sense, but it does feel a little counterintuitive when you compare it to, every other industry. The individuals being empowered by technology, and self-serve software is everywhere in every industry, and people like the flexibility of being able to do things themselves. Is the real estate industry different just because it is like the biggest purchase people will ever make because it is such a complex purchase? Or why do you think that kind of runs counterintuitive to other industries? Yeah,
there's a lot of inefficiency in the market just because of the nature of it. There's a lot of complexity. Yeah. You can't build a self-service model completely to buy real estate because you can't build artificial intelligence that knows where the cracks in the roof are. You can't build artificial intelligence that knows, what somebody likes and doesn't like as far as a home goes and the color of the wall. And, it's just too complex. There's too many parts of buying a home that people care about, the neighborhood, the schools. Zillow has all that data, but at the end of the day, they don't know the area as well as an agent that's lived in that area their whole life. And then people don't also think about, the complexity of the transaction on the back end. All Zillow helps people with is finding a home. That's like 10% of the entire transaction, if that. You've got all the negotiations that take place, putting down an offer, knowing the right offer to put down, having all the paperwork, and then there's just a lot of things related to the transaction that can't necessarily be automated because there's, again, a lot of complexity and there's so many different routes a person can take that we think agents are always going to be a part of the equation because people just don't want to work with the computer with a purchase decision that big. You can do it with a car, and even that's a stretch. But, that's as high of a transaction value that I think people are going to do in an automated fashion, self-serve. And with a home, as personal as it is, we're talking about a home. There's a lot more implications that go along with that word than just a purchase. And an agent is that, trusted emotional person that you can trust to do that transaction with. And don't get me wrong, technology is totally going to change this industry for the consumers, and agents are going to, their commissions are going to be, put pressure on. The commissions are going to come down. They're not going to come down a whole lot over time, but companies like Zillow and like HomeLight and like Redfin are going to push down commissions, but an agent will always be involved because, again, even the underlying business models of these technology companies that are quote unquote disrupting the industry, their revenue comes completely from agents. And so even if the agents were to go away, these companies would just be killing themselves because agents are the ones where their business model comes from. So that's just kind of, what I've dug in deep and noticed.
Yeah. And I think that's a very exciting revelation too, because now you can kind of get on the side of the agent. And as Nate mentioned earlier, kind of empowering that agent. So talk a little bit about how you guys are actually being thoughtful about trying to empower that agent. I know that you guys are taking a very thoughtful approach to user experience. So talk a little bit about the design principles and user experience that you're trying to create with Symba.
Well, the first thing we did was just talk to hundreds of agents. I got on Zoom calls. We met in person with agents. We were building this during COVID, so we wish we could have done more in person, but we couldn't. So we did a ton of Zoom calls. We recorded a lot of those Zoom calls, and then my co-founders, Kendall and Tanner, who are, rock stars at what they do. Tanner's a world-class designer, user experience designer. We recorded those Zoom calls and then sent them to them and we had brainstorming sessions on, how to solve those pain points that they were consistently communicating to us. And what we eventually arrived at, and what is the output of all of those, is Symba, which is a mobile-first CRM. A mobile-first CRM has never been built in the B2B space that we can find. Salesforce and HubSpot have mobile apps, but there's a difference between going from a desktop to mobile and just starting with mobile and then building a desktop. You can't go the other direction. You can't start with desktop and then build a mobile app and expect it to be a great user experience. So we're starting mobile first. So we're mobile first CRM that focuses heavily on communication workflows, especially chat. And we believe that what that's going to do is empower these agents to create better user experiences for their clients while they're buying a home, because we're going to introduce a lot of automation, chat workflows that allow an agent to provide a better experience than what they're giving now. Right now, agents are using, iMessage, they're using email, they're using a ton of different tools throughout the transaction. And what you have is this very fragmented experience for their clients. We want to try to aggregate as much of that into a chat channel as possible. That way, it's just a seamless way of communicating with an agent. And from the agent's perspective, if you're using iMessage is not built to be a CRM. It's not built for the real estate industry. And we're going to be able to create a lot of automations in a lot of ways that, we're going to be better than iMessage, because you can't log all your communication with all your clients on iMessage. They're not mapping back to the transactions. All the paperwork related to that deal is not mapped back to that person's profile. You can't build automations into iMessage. So there's just a lot more we can do within our own mobile-first CRM related to chat than these agents are capable of doing right now. And so that's kind of been our approach is these agents are always on the go. They're not using desktop-based software, so let's build mobile first. The consumer wants to have a seamless, very fast communication channel with their agent because it's a very high risk, a high stakes transaction. They want to use chat. And so we've took those two principles and built an application that is totally unique. That's a mobile first CRM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you touch on it for a second there, but run through the team and how each person has contributed to bringing this product together. That is totally different than the other CRMs.
Yeah. And real quick, just talk a little bit about building that team too, because you went about it and got some rock stars on the team. And I think our audience would really like to know how you actually did that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you really boil down entrepreneurship to its simplest principles, it's problem solving, it's hard work, and it's sales. Those three things I believe are at the core of entrepreneurship. And I'm really good at sales. I can say that very confidently. I'm really good at just communicating ideas to people. And so what I did was I went to all my people in my network. I said, hey, I'm building something. I need really talented people. Can you introduce me to the most talented engineer you know? And I did that enough to where I met a ton of engineers. And eventually I met Kendall. I took him out to drinks and I pitched him what we were doing. I pitched him on myself and I pitched him on what we were solving. It resonated with them. He was at Yum Brands at the time. He built their online ordering infrastructure. Insanely talented engineer. We're really blessed to have him on the team. But I was able to sell him on myself and the company, and he wanted to join and get behind that. I did the same thing with Tanner, who's our user experience designer. Ryan and I sat him down as well and said, hey, we're solving this problem. Here's how we're going to solve it. We know you have experience in this industry. We know you're an amazing user experience designer. User experience is a core part of our platform. And so I'm telling him, listen, your skill set is perfect for what we need, and here's why. So I sold him on that, and it's true. We wouldn't be able to build a product without him. And so really it was me networking, asking my friends, hey, I need to meet the most talented people you know. And then from there, it's my job, and it was Ryan's job to pitch them and say, hey, here's what we're building. We're super excited about it. Are you interested in this? And then from there, it was just figuring out how to formally get them on the team from a operating perspective and an equity perspective, and they're bought in. And that's what's so important is finding people that are bought in. Kendall's been full-time, like myself, doesn't have an income. And so, we're all in on this, and it was just a matter of finding people like that. And luckily I'm, just good at networking and good at sales, and that's all, all it takes that's what recruiting is. It's sales. And so Brian and myself are just good at that.
And talk about...
I don't want to brush over that, though, like, especially when it comes to engineering, and especially in the Midwest, like, that is difficult to find somebody, to even get a meeting with somebody of a certain talent level that is a good engineer, and then to get them to be fully bought in and come on board and work without a salary, like, that's tough. And I think that does speak to kind of the networking abilities that you have and how much you believe in it, because that definitely shines through when you're speaking.
Yeah, I mean, Kendall is a freak. I work closely with like Sam Marks, who, when I look at a great engineer, I look at Sam and I say, man, he's got all the traits. And prior to meeting Kendall, I didn't think I'd meet somebody locally like that. And I believe Kendall's of that caliber, who is a great engineer, full stack, learns very quickly, he's very creative, but he has this other side of him that's really business focused and really understands business well and can communicate really well. And he's just a really rare talent that I got really lucky to find, who happened to be in a really cushy corporate job, and he wasn't that passionate about it. And I was, again, able to just kind of convince him that we were doing something he should be a part of.
Yeah, and before we move on from the team aspect of Symba, you guys have been building this during COVID with either half of your team or over half of your team based out of Louisville, Kentucky, which luckily is only an hour's drive away from Lexington. But talk about being, primarily a remote team, and how you guys have dealt with that and managed culture through that and stayed on the same page, just building a company in general. What's that been like for you guys?
Well, we did out of necessity because of COVID, obviously. It's been fine. I think we're all very driven in our own ways, and we don't need somebody looking over our shoulder to get work done. We understand the stakes here. And so, we haven't had a problem with it. Luckily, we've had Zoom. We use a software called Miro, which I've fallen in love with. Miro is just a really amazing technology that allows you to take what's in your head and put it onto a whiteboard, basically a digital whiteboard. And so we've been able to build a company using Slack, Miro, and Zoom, and nothing else. So there's just been great tools that allow us to do this. And I would say that, we probably would go to in-person work environments sooner if Kendall wasn't on the team. Kendall has really kind of pushed us to be remote because of his own personality and his own beliefs, and he's very independent. And I think that's been something that I was a little uncomfortable with to begin with, but after seeing, because I'd never worked remote, I'd never really worked remote completely. I had a team in Los Angeles when I was out there, and I've always been working around people, and I love that. But I never got a taste of being remote, and Kendall kind of came onto the team and was like, I'm sitting in my room, I'm putting my blinds down, I'm going to work in a pitch black room because that's how I like to work. And I'd never worked around somebody like that, and it really kind of showed me what somebody can do working remote based on how much he was able to focus and get done. And I think it's great. I think remote work's here to stay. I think teams are eventually going to want to move back into the office, at least for part of their work of the week. But we just, again, use great tools, and we've got personalities on the team that work well remote. I've gone back to the office a little bit and co-working, so I've gone into Awesome Inc. because being the salesperson of the team and being kind of somebody that loves to be around people and network, at least for part of my day, I've got to be around people, but again, not everybody's like that. So I think there's going to be kind of a swing either back towards in person, or for those that aren't, they're just going to stay remote.
Yeah, everybody was saying at the top of the pandemic that, like, oh my gosh, is this the end of co-working? And I actually think it's a much stronger use case for it now, because they'll just introduce new plans where you can come in 2 days a week and it's a reduced cost or something. But like that's super interesting, and I think that's going to happen all over the country.
I mean, think about this.
About
we've been able to build this company. Yeah. One last thing on remote work is we've probably spent less than $1,000 building this company. Think about that.
That's insane. That's insane.
Take out our lawyer fees, because I'm not counting those.
Yeah.
Lawyers, we hired lawyers to do some paperwork and stuff, but take that out, we've probably spent less than $1 million because of remote. We don't have workspace. We're not renting a co-working office, and all we're paying for is Zoom and some developer tools that Kendall's using, and maybe a couple of the things I'm forgetting. Nothing else. has been
like the cloud hosting of the app or anything isn't that expensive.
We've got Amazon credits. We've got like a ton of Amazon credits that's going to give us, we're just, remote work is here to stay for startups in the early days, because you have so much at your disposal to start a company with low capital costs, and we've definitely taken advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really impressed me about what you guys have done is just the thoughtfulness that has gone in to the way you've spent money. I mean, and not valuing people's time, outside of what they would be paid otherwise. Just the amount of capital that it takes to start a company these days in 2021 is truly incredible, and it's an opportunity that I wish more people kind of realized. But walk us through kind of the current state of the company as it is. Where are you guys in development? How much longer until you guys are fully live? All of that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're live. We've got a product people are testing. We've built up a wait list. So our strategy to date has been talk to customers, build prototype, talk to customers, iterate. And now and then we built the wait list. So get some excitement, get people in. We spent about a month building a wait list. We got a little over 100 agents on there very quickly, and then we stopped. We had the amount of people that we wanted to test with, and now we're rolling it out to them. And we've got it in their hands. We're getting feedback. And next is we're doing a fundraise. So we're getting good feedback. We've got people saying, "Hey, I love this. I need a mobile first CRM." We've got the product into a great place. Kindle's very confident with it, and we just are to the point we want to accelerate things. We need to continue to develop the product very rapidly, and then eventually, once we get the product to a place where we can commercialize it, we're going to start getting paying customers, because a lot of the people that are testing it now are telling us, "Yeah, we're ready to pay as soon as you meet these requirements as far as the product goes." And we're doing something unique where we're doing product-led growth strategy. This industry really doesn't have a product that's doing this very effectively. And what that means is, this is what Slack and so many others have done, is we're leading with like a free version that has some of the basic CRM features, and that's what we've introduced to the market now in our beta. And right now we're developing our next paid tier, which is going to layer in communication, voice calling, text, email, Facebook Messenger, those kind of chat channels and email are going to be introduced into the application. And then next we'll layer in automation. And so as a user falls in love with it, they can upsell themselves and scale their business through those tiers, but we're going to get you on a free version of it. And right now the beta is that free version. So we haven't monetized yet, but we've got our product into the market. And again, we're getting great feedback from those early users that we got on the wait list.
That's awesome. What's next?
Well, we got to raise some money. Kendall, myself, and Ryan and Tanner. We've been building this thing. We've gotten great progress by bootstrapping it. Without paying ourselves, and that's a sacrifice. We've been willing to make, because we're so passionate about this, and see so much opportunity in the space that we've been doing that. But it's time to take it up a notch and accelerate things. And so we're raising some money. And that's something that I've been focused on most of the day. Most of my days are focused on that. And so that's what's next. And Kindle is moving very quickly on the product. And we're just continuing to talk to customers. So that's something I put so much focus on, is just talking to customers. Yeah. Because, when you don't get paid and you're building a company, it's scary. It's very scary. It's very stressful. It's hard to communicate to somebody what it's like to not get paid for, a year and build something. And it's scary, because you don't even know if it's going to work. And one thing that helps me and is important to us is just talking to customers, because they're the ones that say they need something, and we're building it for them. And it just kind of gives you a sense of confidence. And more importantly, it creates a product that they actually want to use the more you talk to them. So that's been something that I've focused on a lot recently, that I put major importance on.
Yeah, and as you start getting this product into users' hands, something that I've really enjoyed listening to you talk about and watching you develop is your content strategy as you try to get in front of people. So talk a little bit about how you guys are being, I guess, taking a more modern approach to your content strategy as you're using memes on your social media account, and as you're starting this kind of tongue-in-cheek podcast where you're telling stories. Talk a little bit about all that you're doing on that side of this business as well.
Yeah, so one of the core principles of building Symba is agents are consumers. Agents are a very unique business user where most business users sit behind a computer all day. They're enterprise business users. They'll go through a buying process of getting a demo, negotiating a contract, and that's just not the case with agents. We view them as consumers. And so everything up from our product to our marketing needs to match that behavior. And these agents, they're on social media. They love social media. They're on the road a lot. And so we've done a few things. We've really put a focus on being a brand that is also a media company. I think this is something that's going to be a trend going forward, is if you think about, let's say, a software company, their top of funnel is social media, it's cold calling, and there's lots of other ways to acquire leads. But when you're selling to consumers, it's largely social media. And these agents, again, their behavior is that of a consumer. And so we're placing a lot of focus on also being a media company as well as a software company. And so our social medias don't look like a business's social media. We're putting up memes, we're putting up kind of tongue-in-cheek content. We're trying to make people laugh. We're educating people. We're showing them cool, trendy videos. And then we're also starting a podcast. And the podcast is especially important because these agents are in their car all the time, driving around. They need a form of entertainment. And all of the podcasts to date in this space are motivational, business podcasts, all the same bullshit that you can imagine, agents always talking about motivating each other, just like so many of the entrepreneurship podcasts. And it's just oversaturated with way too much motivational and business content. Nobody's really making really great comedy podcasts in this space. And so Ryan, my co-founder, had this amazing idea. I challenged us with, let's start with a podcast that's just totally different out there and it's going to get attention out of the gate. And we came up with what's called Agent Anonymous. And agents love to talk about their deals and how crazy they are. It's bragging rights to go through a transaction with a client that's just a total shit show. And they love telling their friends about it that are their close friends or their close coworkers, but it's actually illegal for them to do that. And it's totally illegal for them to go out publicly and talk about these transactions because they've got confidentiality clauses with their clients. And so what we've done is we've approached these agents and say, we're going to blur, we're going to distort your voice, we're not going to share your name. Come on our podcast, share your craziest stories. Nobody will know it's you. And then we're going to share that with the world so you can finally share those crazy stories and entertain people with your stories. And we've got 5 episodes that we're starting to roll out in kind of a beta-like fashion to get feedback on. And people just love it. People are eating it up. They're sharing it. They're, saying they're laughing out loud as they listen to it. And it's kind of a mixture. It's just really, it's entertaining. You don't even have to be an agent to find entertainment in this because people are talking about, oh man, it's borderline. It's a little risky, honestly, because these agents are coming on this podcast and talking about, people taking huge, going to the bathroom during a showing and just blowing up the bathroom and not knowing what to do. People getting texts from their clients that are just very inappropriate. People walking in on people having sex during showings, people getting divorces during closings, in the closing of a home. There's just so many crazy things agents deal with. And again, this is why you can't automate the industry. But there's just so many crazy things going on in this industry that people don't talk about because they're not allowed to. And we're finally sharing those stories and we're really excited about that. And so what we're using that for is just advertising. It's an entertaining podcast. We're giving these agents value. We're entertaining them. We're making them laugh. And then at the last 20 to 30 seconds of the podcast, we're throwing in a snippet about Symba. Boom, right there at the end of the podcast. Mobile first CRM. You're using some really bad software now. You want to improve it. Get Symba. So that's kind of our approach is, our top of funnel is very media and content driven. We're going to do cold calling. We're going to do some of the other traditional channels, email marketing and things like that. But we want to have a really strong media presence and kind of disarm people when they see our brand and say, hey, this brand, I resonate with this. They're funny. They understand me. They're trying to educate me. They hardly ever talk about their product. And when they do, I have a better understanding of it because they're entertaining me, using kind of these ancillary topics. I love it. And so that's kind of been our approach.
Yeah, and before we move on from podcasts, just real quick, you also did kind of an evergreen podcast about the actual software that I think is a genius move that more software companies should be paying attention to. So just real briefly walk us through what you guys have done with the podcast that actually talks about Symba and your thinking behind that as well.
Well, audio is totally undervalued marketing channel. It's not even the tip of the iceberg. It's like not even been seen yet. And there's just so much opportunity in audio content when it comes to B2B software, B2B consumer software, whatever it is. So what we did was, when you're researching software, the only way to research it right now is to go to their website, read white papers, scroll through pages and pages of the website, and then decide if you like it or not. Well, for an agent who's a really busy person, again, we're matching their lifestyles with every aspect of our business. Agents are very busy people. They're not, many of them are not wanting to go to a website and spend 30 minutes, researching a software. They don't want to get an hour-long demo of a piece of software. So we've got a podcast that specifically just walks an agent through how our software works, what value they get from each feature. And so we've got like a podcast episode for each vertical of our software. For our feed, for our reporting page, for our communication, for our deal transaction management. And so we're walking these agents through it in audio fashion using a podcast, what it's like to be inside our software. And so it's almost like an audio version of our website.
Yeah, which is genius because, like you said, these agents are on the move constantly. They're in the car. You're going to where they are to talk to them. So I just thought that was a very smart move when you discussed that. But as we wrap up here, as you're used to doing when you're typically the co-host of this show, you've built helped build a couple startups in Kentucky. And we always like asking our guests, what's it been like building in Kentucky? So talk about from your perspective, what has it been like building startups in Kentucky? Talk about, you can start with the good and then go to the bad, but fill us in on what your experience has been like.
It's been fun. I really love Kentucky. I don't ever see myself leaving Lexington unless something unforeseen happens. I just love Lexington. I love Kentucky. I think it's a great place to build a business because the quality of life is really high here, and the cost of living is low. The people here are just so helpful. And so with building Middle Tech, I built an awesome network of people, and they're also willing to help in so many different ways. And so the network here and people's willingness to connect and just help people build businesses is very strong. So those are some of the things that, are really great about it. And I think, again, the people is what makes it the best. And some of the other things that, make it hard. Number one is, I think there is a problem with capital. It's not as big as I think people make it out to be. If you have a great company, you're going to get capital. But there is kind of a hole in the market where there are angels, and these angels are very conservative. There are not a whole lot of pre-seed funds, not a whole lot of seed funds in this area. And so what you're seeing is entrepreneurs having to go outside of this area unless they already have a ton of traction. Then they can get, more attention here. But even then, you're talking to very conservative investors that, aren't up with the times when it comes to things like safes, which are now kind of the standard way of raising capital when you're in pre-seed or seed rounds. So they're not as up with the terms of many fundraisers. And they're not up with valuations. Valuations across the country are much higher than they are in Kentucky. And part of that is, there's always been this conservative mindset here, but also in the past, it has been harder to build a software company here because there's not a lot of talent. But in a remote first world now, and especially in a software world, it doesn't matter where you build a company. You're going to find great talent if it's out there because people are working remote now. And there's no longer an excuse to devalue a company just because they're in Kentucky. And I've had conversations just through fundraising that, have kind of, they're not surprising me, but it's just a little disappointing that, some investors will look an entrepreneur in the eyes and say, you're in Kentucky and we're not going to give you this valuation that others are getting around the country. That's just kind of disappointing because, my view of that is what happens when an entrepreneur from Austin or Nashville or New York or Los Angeles happens to move back to the Kentucky area and they go to an investor and say, I'm building this company. Is that investor now going to look that entrepreneur in the eye and say, you might be from Los Angeles, you might be from New York, but you're in Kentucky now, and you're not going to get the valuation you want because you're in Kentucky? At some point, we're just going to have to, evolve. And, that's going to take a while. There's a lot of things that go into that. But that's one thing that I've noticed just in the last few weeks that I've been fundraising, is I've seen some of that, and it's hard. and it's just the reality. And so, we've got to deal with it, but it's got to change at some point.
Yeah.
In a remote first world, though, do you think that that's going to even out quicker than it might otherwise, just because you can go anywhere to fundraise and any investors can find entrepreneurs anywhere? So is it going to have to level out in Kentucky to match the playing field?
Well, the problem is all these angels are going to get left behind because these great entrepreneurs are going to go outside of the state and find funds elsewhere, and then they're going to be looking around for good deals and wonder where they went, and they're going to go out of the state. And so, the entrepreneur is always going to have the upper hand now, and the investors are going to have to be the ones that, catch up with the times. If an investor is not using a safe note these days on a pre-seed round, and they, want to do something, some kind of debt or some kind of, convertible debt, that's just not the reality anymore. I understand that some will want to do that, and sometimes, they'll get their way because of, certain circumstances.
So they have enough money.
Yeah. I mean, if the entrepreneur is desperate enough, or they haven't, been able to find the terms they want, then sure, they might concede and go the route of, local and conservative angels. But at the end of the day, if an investor is not going to keep up with the fundraising trends outside of Kentucky, then you're right. Entrepreneurs, are because of the remote first world, are going to be able to find funds. And we talked about this on Drive when we interviewed Drive Capital. It's like now all these venture capital firms are looking outside of their given region because they have so much access with Zoom now. And, as an entrepreneur, that's great. I'm able to talk to investors in San Francisco, New York, and I've been doing that. It's been cool to talk to these big time investors on the coast that I didn't think I'd, have Zoom conversations with. And that's the advantage we have now.
Yeah,
for sure.
As we always do on these episodes, we like to end with a forward-looking statement. I know Nate kind of asked, what's next immediately, but talk about the long-term vision of Symba and where you want to take this thing into the future.
I mean, ultimately, we are going to change the consumer's experience with buying a home by changing the agents' behaviors and giving agents these great tools. Things are changing rapidly in the real estate space, but they're also very slow. It's very slow change. It's rapid considering how slow it's changed up to this time, up to today, but it's still very slow change. And, we fundamentally believe that agents are always going to be a part of that equation. And our job is to just give them the best software possible that matches their on-the-go busy lifestyles so that they can give these clients of theirs a great experience and instill trust. And that's really our goal long-term, is to basically empower these agents in every way possible so that the consumer, those buying homes, have a great experience and agents can grow their business. So long-term, there's a big ecosystem within the real estate industry that, we want to integrate with. We want to give agents, again, a great CRM, great transaction management. But over time, there's digital mortgage workflows. There's digital title company workflows. There's so many parts of the real estate transaction that are becoming digitized. And we want to integrate those into these agent software so they can, one, work more efficiently, but also give the consumer a ton of options throughout that transaction and communicate it in an effective way in their chosen channels. And so we're really trying to build like a vertically integrated platform that takes care of a brokerage's most important needs, but allow them to adopt new technologies to give their clients options. And they just don't have that right now. There's iBuying, there's all kinds of new mortgage trends going on where you can buy a home before you sell your current home. There's all kinds of digital transaction management workflows out there, and these agents just aren't getting access to them. And so we hope to be, that channel of how they get access to those while giving them their core needs as far as like a CRM goes and their transaction management goes.
Love that, man. Well, it's been awesome to sit down and actually have a formal conversation with you about all of this. It's been a lot of fun watching you build it and hearing your thought process behind the things that you've done with this company. Before we end this, where can people go to learn more about Symba? Where can people go to learn more about Evan Knowles?
So if you go to any channel, whether it's Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, if you look up Get Symba, and Symba is SYMBA. If you put Get in front of it, you'll find us. You can probably just type in Symba, and it probably might pop up. That's where you can find Symba. You can go to our website, which is also getsymba.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. You can just, again, search my name. You search my name on any of the channels, and I'll probably pop up. And I encourage you to reach out. I'm really big on just trying to build up the community and talk to people and share my experience, because when I was going through UK and early in my career, that's how I learned, was just talking to other entrepreneurs. I don't think people do that enough, and I want to give back as much as I can. I know I'm early in my path in my career, but I know I've learned a lot, and I can share that with people, so I encourage people to reach out.
Awesome. All right, man. Thanks for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
It's been interesting to be on the other side, but yeah.
Nice switch up.
We'll cut it there. Yeah, how was it being the guest instead of the host?
That's good. I mean, it wasn't that different. It's just talking to a microphone.
Yeah, just taking more of the percentage of time.
I got to talk more, which is nice.
Yeah.
I'm good at that.
Do we want to try to record an intro with Nate and I for this one, I guess?
Sure.
Are you asking me? Me?
I was just throwing it out there
you guys should do it.
To anyone that wanted to do it. All right, Nate, you want to stay on for a second and we'll just record something? We should probably write some notes about like what we hit on and everything, unless you just want to try to wing it.
How long do you normally do the intros? Like, how long is it?
All right, I'm going to hop off.
All right,
See ya.
All right, see ya.
It's usually... I'm going to quit recording here for a second.